If you're thinking about upgrading to a riding mower, make a path to the Home Depot. Right now, the Poolin Pro 42-inch model's just $11.39. Its 19 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine will power through even the thickest grass, and its rugged reinforced steel cutting deck with 10-year warranty will keep you going and mowing for a very long time. The Poolin Pro 42-inch riding mower, just $11.39, now at the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. U.S. only.
Some choices are hard, like should you choose McDonald's Buttermilk Crispy Tenders or the Buttermilk Crispy Chicken in our signature crafted recipe sandwiches? Well, guess what? You can't make a wrong choice. It's Buttermilk Love, and that's good news. Speaking of good news, now you can get McDonald's 2-piece Buttermilk Crispy Tenders for just $2 from their $1, $2, $3 menu. Cannot be combined with other offer or combo meal. Prices and participation may vary.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and Happy New Year's.
Oh my Lord.
Yes.
Well, we got on. Bernadine, you there? Okay.
I'm here.
Well, I was looking on online, and we are entering a Mercury retrograde, as if you didn't know. Okay. But anyway, folks, we're a little bit late, but this is the Supernatural Substation. I'm your host, Eileen Castano, and thankfully, Bernadine is online. Say hey, Bernadine.
Hey.
Computer
difficulties from hell tonight.
Yeah, coming up the yin yang. So, and we're right up against our guest joining us pretty much. So let me just say ahead of time, Cindy Ponds Newell is an author of I want to say it's supernatural fiction, but she can correct me on that. And she'll be joining us via Skype in just a little bit. So basically, we're just, it's night flight right now. We should have been on a half hour ago, but hey, it wasn't me. It was
me.
Skype. Oh my God. So, well, we were going to have a first 30, but we didn't have a first 30. So, but for those keeping track of the date, it is the 9th of March, 2018. Just make sure we're approaching the Ides of March, which is a very important time. But I don't know. I was going to talk about that link on Facebook that I sent you, that I kind of hooked you into that commentary. But we can do that at length some other time. Basically, it was it was a post about researchers going in and yelling demons before they even know whether or not it's demonic activity or whatever. But we can go into it a little bit. And who do we know that does that? It's a demon. It's demonic.
and the clients also.
Well, that was the thing. Yeah, that was that's what always happens. Is they go in and we know this happens. They scare people, and initially, I thought the post. I'm not going to say who posted it and or who else was commenting or whose page it was on, but I thought initially it was just going to be that talk about basically the irresponsibility of scaring people, which is a valid topic and all, but it's sort of denigrated into an attack on not anything but a scientific, but on approaching things like demonic hauntings with any sort of a religious approach. And so I disagreed with that. I absolutely. Hello. Hey, Cindy, is that you?
Hi, Cindy.
Cindy.
Yes, you're in the queue. Thank you, Joe. He's let me know. Welcome to the catastrophe. We've been trying for a half hour almost to get Bernadine online so we could both be here to talk to you. So she is, and I'm very glad of it. So welcome to the Supernatural Substation.
Thank you so much.
Good to have you. I know I've looked at your books, okay, and but I'd rather just talk to you because your bio was telling me a little bit about your personal self. So I just want you to kind of introduce yourself. You're an author. Is it correct to say it's supernatural fiction or paranormal romance, or tell me where you fall within there?
The first book that I wrote was strictly supernatural, paranormal, ghost. I wanted to write a ghost story, and I based a lot of my first novel on actual experience.
And
And
that was Don't Say Her Name?
Don't Say Her Name. That's correct.
And so, go on. I'm sorry.
At the house that I lived in for about 6 years had a lot of strange occurrences, and I always wanted to write about it, but I didn't know how. And I don't know, something just hit me one night, and I decided I'm going to write a book, and I sat down and wrote a book.
Well, that's great, and I'm gonna get your books on Kindle too. And why don't actually, I want to make sure everybody knows that we're talking to you. This is so mixed up tonight. I'm so glad that you're okay. We're talking to Cindy Ponds Newell. She is an author, and she is an author of sort of supernatural paranormal fiction, although I know you have like a mystery thriller. But just tell us what happened after that, basically. So you wrote the first book, and actually I want to hear about the things that went on in your house that inspired that as well.
Okay. Well, to start with, I will say that when I wrote Don't Say Her Name, I never thought that I would write another novel. That was going to be a one-time thing for me. But I had lots of good response, and I enjoyed writing it so much that I started to think, I could do this again. And but the experiences that I had did not begin with the house that I lived in, but I had my first paranormal experience as a very young little girl. But the house itself was just, I never saw anything. I felt it, and I knew that it was there. And the most horrifying thing that happened was when I was home by myself, and all of a sudden the room got really, really cold, so cold I could see my breath. And I had a cat, and the cat crouched down real low and started growling.
Mm-hmm.
And his eyes
Sorry.
were going back. Oh, it's okay. His eyes were going back and forth. He was watching something, and he could see whatever I could feel. And he went to the back door and started crying to get out. And I opened the door, and he went running out, and I never saw the cat again.
Are you serious? Oh my God.
Yeah, it was. And I always enjoyed reading about ghosts and watching ghost stories and stuff, but I wasn't thinking about anything scary that night. I was actually watching 2020. And I wasn't thinking about anything scary, but when that happened, I was terrified. And at that time, I was married, and my husband worked second shift. And I remember sitting in the living room, terrified. I could not move. And when I heard him drive in, I waited until I heard him shut his door before I got up to unlock the door for him.
I guess so.
And, yeah, usually when I have things like that to happen, it doesn't scare me. I'm intrigued by it. But that night, whatever was in the living room with me was not happy with me. It felt really bad. So I have a way of knowing when it's something good and comforting, or when it's really bad. And that was one of those nights I knew it was bad.
Where were you living at the time? Where was the house?
This house is still standing today, but it's in North Carolina, and a very small community called Fountain Hill.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think? What do you think was the source of the haunting? Do you have any? I mean, was the house old, or maybe on some burial ground or something?
The house was built in the 1940s, and I remember telling my grandmother about what had happened that night. And most of the time, older people are going to say, oh, you don't have to worry about, that's silly and stuff like that. But she told me that if there would ever be anybody to be an evil spirit, it would be the man that had lived in that house.
That's so comforting.
Yeah, she said that was the meanest man she'd ever known in her life, and he actually died in that house.
Oh my!
So,
Wow.
yeah, and I remember thinking, yeah, thanks a lot, Grandma. That's all I needed,
Yeah, it's like I wouldn't go home. That's usually they're going to tell you, oh, it'll be okay, honey, don't worry about it, But no.
And the the lady that owned the house, after her husband died, she remarried, and so they became my landlords. And when we first moved in, I had fried chicken for supper, and I packed up fried chicken to send home to her, not knowing that her first husband had actually choked to death on a chicken bone.
Whoa.
So maybe he was just angry with me over that whole situation.
Faux pas all around. Oh well. Well, you got a good story out of it though.
And we also had a courtesy flusher in our bathroom. Our commode flushed by itself constantly. You could be on the commode. You could be in the shower. You would, and it would freeze. You would freeze with the water. It was awful. And I remember watching some kind of movie, and the lady was complaining because her commode kept flushing on its own. And I was sitting there thinking, yeah, that really happened. And the plumber was telling her there's no explanation for why this would happen. And I thought, yeah, that's all I need.
Maybe that was the guy's favorite room.
But it was very weird. And I can remember one time I actually watched the handle on the toilet go down and come back up.
Oh, holy cow. Yeah, that gets really hairy. Not only that, you're standing there naked and somebody's in there with you, and you can't see them. It's like, oh my God. Because, people always ask that, like you say, well, when your relatives pass on or when you have a ghost in the house, can they see me all the time? And people will say, well, your relatives, they know, I mean, they're not with you continuously watching everything you do. But in the case of a spirit, you really don't know where they're at, and until they do something like flush the toilet. So I guess he must have got a kick out of doing that. I don't know. But so what element, and so the first book, you put all of this into the first book as parts of the story, or what parts did you pick up?
I actually used pretty much everything that had happened to me in that house. But the unique thing about that book is that there are many, many families. It starts in the 1800s and it goes all the way up to the present. So there are many characters that that you read about. But the unique part is that each family comes and goes. You're not following one particular family. It stays with the house. Mm-hmm. And the characters that you need to know about, you are reminded of throughout the novel.
Cool.
I know a lot of people, there's so many characters, I can't keep up with all of them. And I told you don't have to. Just, read each chapter by chapter, and, the character I want you to remember, you'll remember.
You'll make it memorable, right? Bernadine, come on. I know you got questions. I'm going to give it to you because we had trouble getting you in the queue here. So
yeah, hopefully you don't lose me. I wanted to ask, you said that your first experience was in the house, and your grandmother had told you it may be the man that lived there. Was there anyone else in the house that had experiences besides you?
My ex-husband's mother was actually there visiting one time, and she went to the bathroom, and she was gone for quite a while. And when she came back into the living room, she was white as a ghost. And she asked me, "Did you not hear me screaming for you?" She said she was in the bathroom and the door would not open. And she said, "I kept trying." She said the doorknob wouldn't turn. She banged on the door and screamed and yelled to get our attention, and we never heard anything. And after a few minutes,
it was his favorite room.
She watched the doorknob turn on its own, and the door opened. And she said, "I'll never use that bathroom again." I thought it was quite funny because she was my mother-in-law, and she and I just did not get along very well.
Oh, he knew that. You see that? He had your back.
That's right. That one time he did.
I'm still worried about the cat running off over here. Yeah. Lost the cat over. He probably didn't like cats, huh?
Yeah, I love that little cat, and I looked at him for so long. I gave up. I don't know what happened to him, but
it's like, forget it. I'm out of here.
I guess it's
detail.
better than to have to deal with that again.
Dog owners are saying, well, you should have had a dog, because they kept the whatever away, but that doesn't always work. Actually, a cat's good to have around because they're more sensitive to all of it really than a dog is. Dog has to be, I guess, like, sort of like empty-minded or not doing something to pick up on something, or get their hackles up in a state of fear, because, or they sense something that you don't, but they're usually like less acute at it than the cat is. So when you see a cat acting strange, that's like something's going on. So go
That
on, Dee.
before.
Um, was that your only paranormal experience, or because you said you do know when it's a good spirit or a bad spirit?
Right.
How do you pick these messages up? I know how I do, but people are different in their senses.
I don't know how I know. I just do. I remember when I was probably 7 or 8 years old having my first paranormal experience, and I was actually outside playing, and all of a sudden the air around me became very cold, and I knew I was being watched, and that's always stood out in my mind. I know, and sometimes I know that I can tell if it's a man or a woman or I don't know. And sometimes I pick up on the name. It is just a feeling I get.
Oh,
And
okay. Is it a thought
there,
also?
I'm sorry.
A vision or a thought also? You said you can pick up if it's a woman or a man.
Yeah, it's just a feeling I get.
Okay. Go on.
I had and I thought it was just awesome. A few years ago, I rented a building near my home to promote a book during Halloween. I had a big Halloween party, and I had a string of lights that I was trying to untangle to decorate. And I was in a hurry. I was running out of time trying to get everything done, and I was in the building by myself. And I could feel somebody watching me. I knew somebody was there, and I was so frustrated with the string of lights. And I threw them down, and I said, "Listen, if you're going to be in here with me, at least help me." And I watched, yeah, and I watched that string of lights untangle, and I never had anything like that happen to me before. And I could tell that it was a man. I knew that it was a man. And for some reason, I called him John. And it's very strange, but later I found out that a man named John actually worked in that building.
Oh,
So
wow. And you
Wow.
put him to work, see?
and I thanked him for it because I knew that I was getting help from him. And after that moment, I never felt scared there again.
So you
Well, you may
you
have
didn't.
some psychic abilities.
Yeah, well, it seems that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that that is an inherited trait in my family, but I, I mean, I have seen flashes of, I know somebody's walking through and I see a glimpse of it, but I don't normally see ghosts like some people do. But my daddy has seen ghosts on many occasions. He doesn't talk about it, and he will deny it after a while. No, I was just seeing things, but he sees.
And then he just doesn't say anything about it. Well, some men anyway, my dad, when our house was haunted, he's like, I don't know what y'all are talking about, until he saw something and you just could see it on his face, It's like, you saw something, so, So, do your subsequent books, the inspiration for those, are you? It's just like real life inspiration, like you're talking about there, or how did you basically come to write the other books?
Well, all the other books I've written were completely fabricated from my imagination, with the exception of Attached. And I used a very true story when I wrote that novel. Um, now that her children are older, I don't think it's a big deal, but I didn't want people to know at the time that the story actually happened to my sister and her family. They live in a fairly new house, and it was land that they built the house on land that had been in their family for generations. So they don't know where the ghost came from, but they've had a woman and two children in their home for several years now, and nobody knows where they came from or who they are. But my sister loves to go to graveyards and look at tombstones, and so I kind of use that as inspiration for the explanation for what happens in the book. But the main character in that story goes to graveyards, and these two little children become attached to her in the graveyard.
Mm. And which is probably exactly what happened. Some person went home with her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can't help but think that may have been what happened. But one story in particular that I've always thought was very creepy. Her husband was in the bed asleep, and their son was jumping up and down on the bed. And he fussed at him and told him to stop, but he wouldn't. So he rolled over, and his little boy wasn't there. It was another little boy, and he was wearing Victorian clothing. And he was jumping up and down on the bed beside my brother-in-law, but his feet never touched the mattress. He was going up and down, and my brother-in-law said he could feel the bed bounce every time, but the little boy's feet never touched the mattress. He was kind of hovering over him, and it freaked him out, of course, and he reached to turn the lamp on, and when he did, the light bulb in the lamp exploded.
Oh my Lord. Oh, Lordy.
Yeah. I mean, there have been several things that happened to them, and I just thought it was fascinating, so I wanted to write about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, an attachment, it can be fascinating. It also can do a good deal of damage to the person, that is experiencing the attachment. And a lot of people get attached, a great many people get attached and have no idea, of anything, basically, even though they might have personality changes or, something like that. Sometimes they feel like an intruder, they're split personality now or something, and then they make the mistake of being treated by psychiatrists with all of these drugs and everything, when really, it's something they picked up somewhere, and it could be anywhere. When they were in the hospital as a baby, there's a great, or they, go into a funeral home for a dead relative, there's others around there. It's just anywhere that people are, there are spirits.
Yeah, they're everywhere. They're all around us, and a lot of people understand that it's not always the house that's haunted. It could be the land that's haunted, or it could be an object inside the house that's haunted. I mean, it's attached to all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Dee.
That's true. Whenever your sister, she had children, you said?
Uh-huh.
She has children. Did they experience anything when they were younger?
My niece did once when she was young. She was in the living room playing, and my sister said that she stopped playing and she was just standing down the hallway. And my sister's name is Tammy, and Tammy said that she just watched to see what would happen. And after a few minutes, my niece just raised her hand and started waving very slowly. And she was looking down the hallway, and Tammy asked her, "Who are you waving at?" She said, "I don't know who that is." And she never would tell what she saw or what she looked like. But my sister's nephew was actually playing in my nephew's bedroom, and he ran out really fast and said, "I don't like it when that girl comes to play with me. She scares me." Oh. And Tammy went to look, and of course there was nobody there that she could see. But her nephew Noah described this little girl. She was wearing a bonnet on her head, and she had on a long dress, and she had boots on her feet. And so it sounds to me like 1800s, somebody is attached to someone else in the home or to something there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Attached to the location, for sure.
Right.
Dean, did you want to go on?
Well, if it was something in the 1800s, and did you say that house was built in the 1940s?
No, that was but the house that my sister lives in, they built it when they first got married, and that was the late 80s. So, I mean, it's fairly, well, to me, it seems like it's still a new house. But it's
Yeah,
like I
must
told
be attached
you,
to the land.
yeah, because it doesn't matter how many generations your family has owned land, someone else owned it before that.
Right.
Right. Something's been there, and there's no way of knowing what happened, necessarily. I mean, Civil War throughout the South. It could be just a random grave and, got disturbed. There's all kind of things. Because I know in my case, we built a house from the ground up, in a new subdivision, but they had cleared all basically swampland, and so we had that was just my whole story. My whole backstory is my experience of my life, living with demonic hauntings and other entities that were in the house. And it turned out that, according to a psychic, that we were on the spot of where a murder was committed. And there was a car was involved. I don't know whether they drowned the guy or whatever it was, but we pulled up a car fender or bumper actually from the lawn and everything. So all of that, rang true. But we found out later after we've been experiencing all this stuff. So it really doesn't, it's like you can't find anywhere that somebody hasn't passed over, walked over or been there, and somehow maybe became attached to it. So, and it,
Very
like
interesting.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry, that was very interesting. And
Yeah.
but and there are graveyards everywhere. I mean, people buried all over the place. There's really nowhere you can go that you can say for sure there's no one buried here. I mean, it's everywhere. And I'm sure that you've heard about places like Charleston that were so very populated that they would run places to bury the dead, and so they would have to bury them on top of other graves. And so, I mean, they're everywhere you go, there's going to be somebody buried.
Yeah, down here in New Orleans, it's like anywhere you dig in the proximity of or the periphery of the French Quarter, you're going to hit bones because cholera epidemics, yellow fever, the bodies were just on top of each other, and they threw them into mass graves. And like, usually when somebody's doing some major construction on one of the French Quarter streets, they'll have to stop and they'll have to call in the archaeologists or the anthropologists to, because they find bones and they have to determine, I guess, how old they are and all that. But it's layer on layer of people dying over time and everything. So, and and that's the Civil War dead being so strewn out, is kind of gets me thinking that you never know with that, because especially across the excuse me, the South, you really have no idea, and it could, there could be a sad story attached to it. So, but you would feel that, and so because you're sensitive to those things. So you're using all this to inform your writing. What do you plan? How do you feel about? Let me ask you this. I read your
Okay.
bio. I read your bio, and I know you. I learned about your faith, and you have a strong faith in Christ. How do you
Uh-huh.
reconcile your experiences and your apparent sensitivity to spirits with your Christian faith? Um, in Christ. Let's just say that. How do you reconcile it all? Because a lot of people think everything spiritual is of the devil. In other words, everything that is not of God, then everything else is the devil, and it's not that cut and dry. So how do you reconcile that?
Well, that is a very good question, and I've been asked that before. My theory is that how do we know it's not of God? Just because you don't see something doesn't necessarily mean something is evil just because we can't see it or just because we don't understand it. Um, one of my theories is that when I have read in the Bible that our days are numbered, we know what God knows the day that we are going to be born. He knows the day that we're going to die. I think that He prepares a mansion for His children, and because we are human, sometimes we we come to that end before we are supposed to come to that end. So maybe there are people who are just still waiting for their mansions to be completed.
Mm. That might be so. I mean, a lot of times people are killed because of the will of others, or people die because somebody decides to commit murder or something, and and people have struggled with that. Like, well, if God knew this was going to happen, why did He let it happen and stuff like that. The reason I'm asking is because, and Bernadine and I were talking about it just briefly, very briefly before you joined us. But a lot of people in the research of the paranormal investigators, they run the whole gamut of total complete immersion. They believe everything is haunted, everything's a ghost, or worse, everything's a demon, to the absolute polar opposite of it, total skeptics, devoted scientism disciples who say nothing, nothing is. There's no such thing. It's all science and all that. So, we run the gamut of that. And just recently, we were talking about somebody who criticized the role that religion and belief can play in that. And I mean, yourself in the Gospels, Christ was casting out demons. Why, casting demons out and saving and bringing all of the other miracles. But one of the greatest ones that he did was the casting out of demons, and that's where we get the "I am Legion" from, that everybody likes to quote, but they don't believe in. So, have you been involved in any way with paranormal research? Not with a team, or maybe with a team, or do you know people that are involved in that?
Not personally. I have a lot of Facebook friends who do paranormal research and investigations, and I find it very fascinating. And there have been times when, especially with my oldest daughter, she will be 20 in May, and she has a lot of the same interests that I do. And there have been a few times that we have gone in different places, knowing there was something there, feeling it, knowing it was there, and taking cameras, just on a whim, just to see if we could find something. But as far as having the equipment and the technology, a lot of investigators have. I've never done anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of them, and it disturbs me because, and Dean and I, what we talk about primarily, because we both had lives full of, bad experiences, basically, but other good experiences. But we talk about the dangers of things, and I was just thinking about, your faith and my faith as well. It's like, it's essential, like, as someone who does, I guess, investigations. Dean will tell you, I get bored. Yeah, I mean, sit in the dark for 4 hours and wait. I'll be the one eating, nibbling, walking up and down. So I don't really go. That's Dean's area of it, But you you have to be able to believe in something spiritual, in order to be looking for proof of spirituality. And I really, I don't know if it perturbs you the way it does me, for the dismissing the spiritual aspect, of Christ. I mean, if the supernatural is real and ghosts are manifesting, and bad things are real, like demons and stuff, well, obviously, I think it's just on the top of my head right now because I saw a post on Facebook. But it's interesting that you would, that you as a guest share the same idea about that. I couldn't think of going into even writing books, like you may agree with me, doing research. I write ghost stories as well about, ghosts of New Orleans, but there's a lot of other things that I write about the dangers, like Dean and I talk about. And so I have occasion to come on, some pretty kind of, iffy texts and books and stuff like that you could pick up basically anything from. So, but if I didn't have my faith, I don't know what I would do, or where, it's just the way of naturally responding. Do you feel that way too?
Most definitely. And you were speaking of demons. The Bible tells us clearly that demons are real. And when someone can talk about angels being real, but we don't believe in demons, well, how could believe in angels and not believe in demons? I mean, I don't believe in them. I believe that they exist, and I think that they are just as real today in our world as they have ever been. And
absolutely, both of them, the good and the bad. Mm-hmm.
there's and like I said earlier, just because we can't see something doesn't necessarily mean that it's evil or that it's bad. And I don't understand why there are spirits among us. And it's everybody has a theory, and and I have thought before, well, maybe they died before they had a chance to finish. They had something important they needed to do, and they just cannot let that go. Or I don't know. There are so many things that we don't understand, but have strong faith. You believe. I mean, that's how do I word it? You have to have that faith in order to get through anything. And if you're going to believe
right
in one thing, you have to be able to believe in everything. You can't just say I'm going to choose to believe this, but not that part.
Right. But you can't be this cold, hard skeptic who says, well, none of that's real, because then what are you researching it for? How can you prove anything about something you have no belief in at all? It's just where my thought just went, because when you talk about demons, and we talk about demons too, but there are evil people in the world. And obviously, I mean, I'm stating an obvious fact, and those people die. And death doesn't improve them. And they are the makings for the devils that torment people. But it becomes like, Christ himself, and many people go to the Roman Catholic ritual of exorcism. I was just moving into exorcism. There's praying over, etc. But in the Roman Catholic, it's something about, it's not something, it is Christ that these things fear. So it's interesting when you look on television and all, when people finally have to throw up their hands and say, yeah, it's got to be something demonic. They always call in religion. They'll call the pastor in, or in the case of when they really think it's an extreme demon, they get, they want the Catholics to come in, and and it's all Christian, and yet they want to exclude it. They want to exclude it from a possibility that you could be safe while you're investigating or whatever, because you have faith in God. Right. So it puzzles me, and I was wondering what you thought about it. Let me bring Dean in. Go ahead.
Well, I believe, without the faith and your spirituality, Christians, if you don't have that and you go into the paranormal investigative, or, researching the supernatural and all this, how do you protect yourself without that? I mean,
Right.
it's a big question, because if you don't believe, or you're a big skeptic, and you go into these situations, or these places that are really haunted, you do have, you know, a way of picking up a bad attachment. If you're not protected, you have to know how to protect yourself. And how can you protect yourself if you don't have your faith?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
There's a difference between paranormal investigative research, and there's a difference in ghost hunting.
Mm-hmm.
Ghost hunting, like Eileen says, is a glorified hobby.
Right.
Paranormal investigative researchers go in to try to help people with their hauntings, try to give the answers, try to find some kind of help for them. They're there, out of compassion, doing it for free, helping people, and trying to find answers to all of the unexplained things in the world that we can't see. So how do you feel about the differences? I'm sure you've seen the differences between everything you've seen on TV versus the research and people that are actually out there helping others.
Right. And, I guess I can answer your question by saying, when I totally agree that, you have to be protected. So many people don't realize just how dangerous it can be. And, you can open, there are doors all around us that really need to remain closed. And that's like some friends of mine who played with the Ouija board a while back. And maybe it's just a fun game, but that opens a door. And sometimes these are doors that need to be left shut. You don't want to subject yourself to anything that could possibly be dangerous. So when the door, just do it.
Yeah, Ouija board, that's Russian roulette right there. You're just and a lot of people. Yeah, I was just thinking while y'all were talking. You'll get a lot of people talking about surround yourself with a white light, and then they're going to go in and sage. And I mean, no shade on those people and their practices, but white light's not going to help you. It's envisioning yourself in something is not going to help you in the presence of a serious entity. I mean, it's but faith will stop them. And it just, I just don't understand how people can attack others for their faith at all. But it seems essential, like Dean was saying, in a field of study that puts you in contact with the supernatural. Um, how do you feel about the supernatural realm? How do you feel about legendary creatures like the vampire, the werewolf, other stuff like that?
Mm. uh,
That's another book.
yeah,
Could be.
you know, I've always been very open minded, and I'm not going to say that things like that can't exist because I've never seen them. So how do I know? But definitely, I do not believe in aliens, and no offense to anyone who does, but that's just. But you have to keep in mind that there are so many people who don't believe that ghosts could possibly be real. They've never seen one. They've never had that experience, so they don't know. So there are plenty of people who can definitely say that yes, there is extraterrestrial life, but because I've seen it, I've never seen it, so I guess I can say I definitely believe that it's not real. I've just never had that experience.
Well, we have over here. I can tell you. You got a lot of people over in New Orleans too who think they're vampires. They run around with the fake fangs and all this other stuff, which is, whatever. That's good. At Halloween, it's great, And they usually have
Yeah.
nice costumes that go with the fangs and all. But, Dean and I get a lot of guff about it when I talk about the real vampires, folklore, which are spirits that leave the grave and feed on the energy and the blood of the living, and then they go back in the grave. I mean, they're not some dead aristocrat that looks like Tom Cruise and jumps out of a coffin. I popped a lot of bubbles with that one. It was like Twilight, Anne Rice. None of that happens. The thing in folklore is terrible. It's really not a creature that you want to cozy up to at all. And it's the one creature that needs to be annihilated in order to stop it from what it's doing. I mean, you can drive off a werewolf. I believe I believe it because I've seen that, but I also believe it again, and we go back to what Christ tells us and what the teaching is. That there are things in this world um, that are just unexplainable or just intent and part of the world that we're in, that we experience, as if we don't have enough problems. We're in their world, and sometimes they cross over. I mean, you could use some supernatural creatures in your books, right?
Yeah. Well, let me ask a question.
Okay.
You're in an area of the country that I have always associated Louisiana with voodoo.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure why. Tell me, what are your thoughts on? For me, I believe that voodoo is very real and very strong. I just believe that being a Christian, my faith is much stronger.
Mm-hmm.
But I did a lot of research on this for my first book, and it has become a very interesting topic for me. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Voodoo, especially among people in New Orleans who practice it, but all over, they consider it a religion, and the religion itself, not like our Christian faith, but has a pantheon of deities, or yes, deities and spirits that they worship. They consider these spirits to be ancestral spirits of a remote time that were good people when they walked the earth, that they were exemplary people, and so when they died, they're able to interact and intercede and help their descendants. So because the origin of voodoo is in Western Africa, in Africa generally, but also in Western Africa, at least the voodoo we know here. So if you say, yeah, voodoo and voodoo doll, they kind of look at you like, oh, well, it's a religion. Well, to them it is. What the idea of the voodoo doll and the chicken feed and all that, that's really known as hoodoo. People do labor it, but it's really hoodoo. And what hoodoo is, it's a folk tradition, but anybody can access it. It's not like particular to any race or any group of people. If, for instance, example, I always say this, let's say I'm mad at somebody. I'm just so mad, that's it. And I go outside and I grab me a bunch of dry grass and, and I'm like, and I tie that thing up and then, I'm mad all day or I stuff it into some cloth and finally I get to stick pins in it. That's hoodoo right there. And usually, because these spirits are so immediate, they're there waiting for you. I mean, if you reach out to evil or you reach out to gray, let's say, between the light and the dark, they're right there to respond to you, and that has killed people. People laugh at that, but that has killed people. But what you see from a distance as voodoo in New Orleans is kind of that practice is more like hoodoo. But what voodoo or the practitioners that came over from Africa, what they did as slaves to maintain their religion or their belief system, they hid it within Catholic accoutrements, basically. They syncretized their spirits, their major spirits, with saints of the church. For instance, like St. Peter at Legba is St. Peter because he holds the keys of the crossroads. You'll see the Virgin Mary in all sorts of forms because New Orleans is Catholic. I mean, the primary religion here is Catholic. And they did that to hide their faith in plain sight. So, when some say, the master or the overseer would see him praying to a statue of St. Joseph, that was okay, but if they're in there, voodoo drumming and all, that wasn't at all okay. So in the hiding of it, in the syncretization, it becomes sort of a fluxy error. Now, there are bad things that you can do in voodoo, but when you see the bad workings associated with I don't know, Marie Laveau, she had a daughter who was her name was Marie Laveau. And the bad things about the voodoo queen, Marie Laveau, are really associated with the daughter because the mother was very religious. She was a Catholic. She was devout. She was a healer, a midwife. She knew roots and herbs, the whole thing. But the daughter really turned it into the type of flamboyant voodoo that as looking from somewhere else would know. So down in New Orleans, they have basically appropriated the Catholic, prayers and even biblical prayers. Moses is included in some workings. They go back to King Solomon and other workings. So it's a mixed bag, but strictly speaking, people who adhere to voodoo will separate it from that sort of visceral type of hoodoo, that root working, which is responsible for a lot of, I don't know, payback, attack, cursing, hexing, that all kind of leaks over into the hoodoo that is known. I mean, it's known by different, like in the Carolinas, there's the Gullah people. That's what they practice. In the Delta, the Mississippi Delta, those are all hoodoo people. But here it mixes with Indian practices, with the people of other areas of Europe that came over here. So it's kind of special here, but it's not exactly what you hear about voodoo. Like, you have to separate. Now that one's a faith and the other one is pure magic and folk magic. Right. And it works. Believe me, it does work. Mm-hmm. The last thing you want to come out of your house and see is like, a voodoo doll or a trick bag on your steps. Even now, people get all freaked out,
Right. Yeah. Well, good reason.
Yeah, good reason. I mean, because at least for me, it's like no way. I know, I know what they're trying to do. But there was a time where I was into all of that, and I had gotten away from, because I'm Roman Catholic, I'm Church of Rome, and I had gotten away from all that, and I had gotten caught up into that syncretization of the saints, um, and it gets really gray and hazy, and so I know I am an occultist. I have done stuff, but I've kind of circled back around to rediscovering my own faith. And honestly, I don't think I've ever said this. It aggravates me that the saints of the Catholic Church, like them or not, other people, people criticize us for that, but it kind of aggravates me that they've been appropriated um, into, magical practices that have nothing to do with them. So I've come around to my faith again because you got to know how bad it is out there. In other words, I've seen so many things and been involved with so many things that it's like, never mind. It inevitably brings you back to a place where you can be protected, where, I have no problem saying there's ghosts, there's werewolves, there's anything that you think is out there is out there. But the one thing that protects you from everything is him. It's Christ. And so I came back to my faith through that journey. So, because I can't say I never did stuff, I did. There's at least a couple of cars that got right. But seriously, I can't say that I didn't, but it
It,
brought me back, to my faith.
and so every experience that you had was worth it because it brought you back to where you needed to be.
Right. And it's informed everything that I've written. Bernadine suggested that, we talk about like some things that really happened. My book is called, I only have one I'm working on. I've been working on the second volume, but Haunting Tales of Old New Orleans. And each of the stories in there is rooted in a folklore that has a kernel of truth. And one of them is Barakupe, the zombie king. He was a real man. He was a real man. He was a brigand. He was a fugitive. They tried to go in there and get him. They would shoot him, and bullets would pop off of his chest or flatten on him. Even though he had an arm shot off, he didn't die. He didn't die that they knew of. And long story short, when they finally captured him, and this is true, they brought him, back to the jail, the arsenal, and then they hung him. And he was supposed to stay up there for a week, and within hours they had to take him down because he was decomposing that quickly. That
Wow.
is, he was alive, but he was not. He was a zombie. That's a real zombie. And that really happened. And I'm a descendant of Louis Moreau Gottschalk, the composer. And in his Notes of a Pianist, he talks about that. That was in July of 1837. And the smell was terrible. So they basically hung a man who was already dead. And it was magic that was keeping him animated. Necromancy, really, just plain old, like old European necromancy and Indian magic as well, the Native American magic, because they aided him basically, because they were nearby geographically, so they were kind of like covering for him. But yeah, they had to take him down because he stunk up the whole the whole place because he was dead, and that's
That,
the truth. That really
that's
happened.
amazing. Now, is this book available on Amazon?
Yeah, or at my website, ellingpistanio.net. But yeah, it's on Amazon. And they have a Kindle version. It's called Haunting Tales of Old New Orleans, History, Legends, and Lore. Here I am. I'm interviewing, but I don't mean to take up the whole time with my stuff. But that was inspiring to me. The things that I'd heard all my life and stuff, and each of the stories in it is based in something that truly happened. People find it hard to believe, but New Orleans is a really special and unique town, or it used to be. But it had a certain magic all its own because there's so many people practicing down here, all kind of stuff, So, and you might get some ideas for your next book from
We
some of this.
we were there last summer, and I knew I would be coming back. So we're actually making now that when my daughter turns 21, we're coming to Nolans.
Be careful. That's all I have to say. It is a lot of crime. Somebody is shot every day. And I mean, I hate to tell, I will say that it's just be careful. Let me know when you're coming so I can kind of tell you the areas not to go. I can give you my email at the end
Okay.
here of the show, but or I can I'll tell you what, I'll contact you with it. But seriously, and this is for everybody listening, it's dangerous right now down there because they're out of control. Basically. So you need to know areas that, there's some tour companies I can recommend to you so you can, safely explore. But do let me know because I don't want anything to happen to any visitor, but not
Well,
you.
thank you so much.
I don't
It's
want you to
always
have that real life experience, right? I went to New Orleans and I got mugged. Or, I mean, I'm laughing about it. It's like, no, all I got was this T-shirt. Yeah, I don't want you to have that experience. I'm gonna do T-shirts like that, DM, and say I got mugged in New Orleans.
Hmm.
how
Listen to Dean. Dean's like, she
The
knows I will.
supernatural is safer than New Orleans. Yeah.
I'm telling you, the ghosts are the only safe things down there.
Hmm.
So what are your plans like for writing in the future? What do you have in the works, and where are you going with that?
well, I have written a sequel to One Great Secret, which is actually my favorite novel of the
Talk
ones
about
that
that.
I've written.
Yeah,
That's
wanted
the
to
one I
ask
like.
you. hmm Go ahead.
And so I've written a sequel to that, Two Grave Mistakes, and I hope to have it published soon. My publishing plans got put on hold, and so now it's just kind of waiting there for the
Mhm.
funding to get published. And but that One Grave Secret was my favorite. I enjoyed writing it the most. I had planned to use a pen name while writing it, and so I just kind of let my guard down and I'm not gonna lie, I let my hair down and I just went with it. Then my editor suggested that I use the name that I've used on all my other books because I had already built a fan base by then.
Yeah.
So this is not a ghost story, and it's gonna freak a lot of people out because they're gonna get
That's
it thinking
right.
it's spooky, and it's not. It's
Well,
creepy,
tell
but
us. It's yeah, because I read it. You talk about how the only one that's really not a ghost story, but it's still creepy. Can you tell us about it? Is it based on real life event? You said it was more like a mystery or a thriller than a real ghost story.
right. It's a serial killer thriller. Um, it's it's all of my novels are based in towns in North Carolina, and some of them are fictitious and some are not. But this particular novel is set in the 1960s, and it's about a young boy growing up in a funeral home. His daddy is the town's mortician, and when a young girl that he attends school with is killed in a car accident, her body is brought to their home to be prepared for visitation and then burial. And he has what I call in the book an inside voice that tells him what to do. And his inside voice makes him believe that this young girl is actually talking to him. Um, Basically, he falls in love with her, and in his mind, she falls in love with him. But then when she is buried, he completely loses all control, and he decides to replace her.
Mhm.
And goal is to find the perfect replacement. So when one new girl is not enough, he has to find more and more.
Oh Lord, that's yeah, that is
Yeah,
creepy. But it's really
it,
it's not a ghost story, but it is kind of.
yeah, I mean, it's not for anyone with a weak stomach. And I've had people tell me, I ordered it, I started it, I couldn't read it, I couldn't do it. My mother will not read it. She knows the storyline, and she will not read it.
Wow.
It is, there's a lot of necrophilia in it, and it's not for the faint of heart.
Hey, well,
Wow.
maybe all the ghost girls will get together and gang up on him.
That's part three. That's three
I'll
grave secrets.
give you any spoilers, but there won't be a third book, I don't
Ah,
think.
well, you never know. I mean, spoke of Anne Rice. Anne Rice used to say that Lestat wrote her books, basically. And he would like, quote unquote, come to her and tell her when it was time to write, and she had a new story. So you never know. I mean, it's in your mind, obviously, but it's like your characters are asking you, hey, there's more here. Let's keep writing me. And something. So you never know. But necrophilia, I didn't know you were into that. No.
Well, not saying I just wrote about it.
Well, and we were talking earlier. So how do you reconcile that again with your faith? You're writing fiction, but you're dealing with a pretty dark subject, and a lot of people, I'll tell you, a lot of people get lost like that. You know what I mean? A lot of writers go into researching or go into dealing with a subject like that, and they get lost.
I can't honestly say that I've ever really even thought about how it would. I mean, it's never interfered with my faith. And now I feel bad. Thanks a lot.
No. I didn't mean it for that. Don't feel bad. I mean, it's a subject matter that you would be, it would be surprising to hear a person of faith cover, but no, that's your best. That's your book. The next one will be great. I'm just saying, obviously, you're receiving your inspiration from somewhere, and God is giving you the talent, so use it. It's just that sometimes, as a writer, and you can relate to this, it's like, wow, you look back and it's like, whoa, or something like, where'd that come from? You're right. I can't have that scene in this book. Or, I mean, I'll put all kind of, occult stuff and folklore stuff long before I do any kind of sex or anything. No, the romance is not on there. It's going to be, hardcore, supernatural. It's going to be demons, and it's just an idea. When you walk into that, you got to walk through it to understand it, and then to write about it, so that seeps into you.
And I think that, I don't know, there's maybe, well, then one of the reasons that I had planned to use a pen name was because I didn't want everyone who knows me to associate me with that subject matter. But once it was published, and I had a lot of people loved the story, and that really, that kind of gave me a boost in confidence with my writing, because you either love it or you hate it. It's not the kind of book that just anyone can stomach and enjoy. And I guess I would never compare my writing skills to Stephen King, but it's to me it reminds me of a Stephen King type story. So you either enjoy it, or you start it and think, no, I can't do this.
I'm gonna get it, and I'll let you know. But do you like Stephen King? Are you a fan of his?
I am. I have always been a Stephen King fan. I was reading Stephen King when I was in elementary school. I would have to hide it because I didn't want to get in trouble for reading subject matter, but it was what I was interested in.
I don't know. You were reading Stephen King?
Yes.
My daughter and I were just talking about this yesterday, because she watched Gerald's Game on Netflix, and that's apparently a Stephen King thing. I just my biggest problem with Stephen King is, like, you'll be reading along and you're really into the story, and then he will use some colloquialism or some dialectic, nuance that is only heard in Maine, because obviously that's where he's from, and it makes me stop. Like, you want to read a book and just flow with it, and then all of a sudden he'll say blah blah, and I'll be, what the hell is that? What is that? What does that mean? And then you realize you're reading a book, So that's always been my biggest complaint, is that he puts in all of this hokey dialogue of stuff that I can't think of anything, but he puts it, and sometimes he puts it in kids' mouths, or like in It or something, and it's like, what is that? I don't know, whatever Maine colloquialism, might have to do with winter or whatever, and he sticks it in there, and I'm like, now I'm reading a book. I know I'm reading a book. So I've always been disappointed because of that.
Right. I know exactly what you mean. You want your story to flow, and you want it to be an easy read. And when you're reading something like that, and all of a sudden there's this dialect that you don't understand, and you're like, wait, what? Sometimes you have to go
Right.
back and read it again, and that's not the kind of book I
Exactly.
want.
Right. And he never like sets it up. It just happens. I mean, because he is from Maine, and I'm like, it's like me being from New Orleans and throwing in some, a bunch of who dat and all this other stuff, yat talk and darling and all this other stuff, and
You have to
somebody in
stop and
California
Google
that
something.
what?
You're
Yeah,
gonna
you
have
have
to
to
stop,
stop. No,
Google.
I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I mean, it's just weird stuff that uh, they only say apparently in the Northeast or in Maine. It's like I don't know Maine. I've never been to Maine. I don't know why. But that was my biggest. That's my biggest complaint about it. I think the only book he had that I really liked was Night Shift. He had with the 4 novellas in it, and that was the one that became Stand By Me, the movie. That story was excellent, just by itself. Of the 4 kids going to find the dead body, that was great. But I'm not a fan of Stephen King. I have to admit it. And that's the reason why, because he just turns me off.
Yeah.
But I can
Now,
appreciate that you guys love him. But I just
Well, I liked
have.
him in high school. That's when
Well,
I
he's
had
a
to.
lot. He's a lot
Yeah,
older now. He's gonna be
yeah.
using all that Maine dialectish.
you
The
know,
older he gets.
there's some Stephen King novels that I absolutely loved. I think Misery was my favorite, my all-time favorite novel. But there have been some books that I started and I couldn't even finish. Gerald's Game was one of those. I could not even. And after, I don't know, I'd pick it up, I'd put it down. And I finally skipped through to the very end just to see how it ended because I just couldn't. I couldn't do it anymore.
Mm.
Well, according to the review, the critique my daughter gave, it's just totally ridiculous. When it's acting, usually it's like, look, like Twilight. Okay, let's take Twilight. And I have a friend who really likes Twilight. There are bunches of people. My daughter, for instance, she said the books were great. I couldn't read them. I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was. But when they made it into a film, I have seen and I've watched them more than once. All of the movies. Now I don't like Kristen Stewart so much, but that story what they tell in the movies is what I'm looking for in a book. But I'm not a high school whatever meeting a vampire. And I have a problem with the sparkly vampires. I have to say that, but they made it into movies, and I'll watch the movie. And that's a lot of times with Stephen King movies. The movies from his books are to me, I get a lot more from the adaptations than I do from the actual books. Do you read Dean Koontz?
I never have. I've never
I
given
wrote.
him a try.
There's one
My
book called Midnight that you might like. Midnight is the one that I like. You might like that one.
I'll have to give that a try. I love Mary Downing Hahn.
Hmm. Now, what?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was saying, what are some of her books?
She writes children's novels. And my daughter brought home a Mary Downing Hahn book from school in 6th grade, and it was called Deep, Dark, and Dangerous. And I saw it on our kitchen table, and I picked it up out of curiosity, and I read that book in one night. It was that good, and so I made it my mission to find every book by her that I could, and I mean, I just love the way that woman writes. Um, and she writes from, yeah, it's more for a juvenile audience, but they're ghost stories, and I don't know, they're well written, they're clean, they're decent. You're not going to see a lot of bad language or um, terrible you know um, violence. I mean, it's just
Hmm.
I just books.
I see the cover. I pulled that up. Deep and Dark and Dangerous. It's a Scholastic book. So
Uh huh.
I can't think of the name of it. Ghost Sitter, I think it was. I picked it up at like a thrift store for 50 cents, and it was a Scholastic book. I read it and I thought this is a really good story, and it didn't have gore or anything. It was somebody, a girl who was babysitting herself, and there was another girl who died that was the ghost and babysitting with her. But it was like, I'm going to read this. It's like for 12 years old, but it was really good. So a lot of good stuff. How do you feel about Anne Rice?
Yeah.
Well, her
I'm
writing,
not.
okay. I mean her books. Okay.
I'm not an Anne Rice fan. I have. I tried. I will say that I tried, but it just wasn't. She's just not an author that I can relate with or relate to. I just didn't enjoy her writing.
Well, back when I was in high school, the Interview with the Vampire came out, and I had the paperback, and I read it, and I loved that book. I loved it. One reason was because um, she put scenes of New Orleans into a new light, or she reminded me that certain places were there, and I was like, I haven't been down there. So it was really communicating to me. And I think that she was always hoping that Louis, the Brad Pitt guy in the movie, was going to become the main person. But Lestat, the anti-hero, became the hit, and she wrote everything else about that. But I mean, I don't want to say, but that's it. I mean, Interview with a Vampire, a little bit of the second book, Vampire Lestat, and then that's it. I agree with you. It's a very difficult read. It really is. You'll be reading it and be like, why the hell did you put that in there? Why this or that? I don't think it needs a lot of it. I like the movie. You can satisfy me by taking me to the movie.
And I always want to read the book before I watch the movie, but um, I don't think I've ever even watched Interview with a Vampire. I don't think I've ever seen that
Well,
movie.
again, that one was filmed down here. So initially, I watched it for two reasons: Tom Cruise, which I liked it. I still like Tom Cruise, and the locations, because I wanted to see New Orleans in the background and stuff like that. So it's not something that I if I see it on, I'll have to watch it. But I've watched it a couple of times. So it's just that's as far as I could get. I have the other books. I have Queen of the Damned, and I have the Mayfair Witches books, The Witching Hour, and I can't handle a lot of the sex and stuff, and I just don't like the homoeroticism. That these two are like hung up on each other. I just can't handle that. So who fell off the conversation here? Did we lose Cindy? I think
Oh
we did.
no.
I think we did. I think we lost her. Are you there, Cindy? Oh, she hung up when I said Anne Rice. Ah, I think we lost our
Uh-oh.
guest. Let me see if Joe. Well, she can call back. She might call back. Let me just notify him. Anyway, here we are talking about Anne Rice.
I didn't hear her drop.
I did. I heard her. She might be calling back in. But anyway, I can continue with you. I just typed to him. I can continue with you by saying, and you know this because you've been with me. I want to get an autograph. I don't want to be, I don't care. It's that one book, and basically it was like, that was kind of it. I have tried. There's one chapter in the book, Memnoch the Devil, which is way down the line. In the books that she wrote, there's one chapter 21, and that's it. So I even copied that chapter. I remember when she had the Mayfair Witches out. You remember? Do you know who Al Copeland is, right? The guy who founded Popeye's Chicken.
Yeah.
Well, excuse me, he was going to open a cheesecake factory uh, on St. Charles in a building that I think in the last book where she has Lestat, the body, I don't know if it's body thief, where the scene is that he's looking into the glass of this empty building. I think it's a car dealership, and she wanted it to stay that way. And there was this big kind of like public argument going on between Copeland and Anne Rice, and he was like, "Why do you want to keep a business, a thing vacant, when we could bring business?" And she was like, "You're going to turn it into a cheesecake factory." So this whole like, if by that argument, you'd leave everything standing, or never change anything. And I'd be more mad about the stuff that was torn down previously. I'm still talking to Joe to see if we can get our guests back. So, but if not, you might want to message her at whatever contact information that you have, and let her know we're trying, or she can try calling back in. But if Joe's not there to answer it. Anyway, here we go with the technical problems. Oh, and it's only going to get better from here. I was looking up on online before while we were struggling to get online for a half hour. It's the start of Mercury retrograde, folks. We're in the first shadow phase, and it goes direct. When is that? It goes direct in a couple of weeks. Hey, what happened?
Hey.
Hey, don't know. Drop call. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. We carried on talking about Anne Rice just a little bit. I was telling Bernadine about yeah, he's got her back. I'm sorry. Thank you, Joe. I was telling her about Al Copeland. You know who Al Copeland is? The guy that he's local. He's dead too. Founded Popeye's Chicken down here.
Hi.
He was the founder, and there was he and Anne Rice had like a public kind of argument going on for a while because apparently in one of the books you and I haven't read, and Dean either, at the end, Lestat is looking at himself and he's reflected in the window of a vacant building. Okay, and I think it used to be a car dealership on St. Charles. Well, Copeland bought that building and he wanted to put a cheesecake factory there, Copeland cheesecake, whatever. And there was this big argument about it. She wanted it left vacant because that's where, Lestat's the end, her whole series ended. And he wanted to put a chicken and cheese factory is what it was. And he prevailed. He got it. And the cheese factory, I think it's still there, but it's like, okay, I mean, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to a book like the way, oh, you can't tear that down. My character is looking, I mean, that's New Orleans, but I also mentioned that I just don't, there's one chapter in the book, Memnoch the Devil. It's the 21st chapter. And if you happen to see it, it's the best description of Catholic hell ever written. Okay. And she was a Catholic. And it's just like we were taught in school, it's fire, brimstone, the whole thing. I was like, this is great. So I just kind of copied those pages and, never went back to the book. So now I'm talking, and I hope nobody will do that with any of our books or your book or any that I might have to write. But, let me ask you that. How do you work on it to make it appealing to a wide number of people? Because supernatural fiction has like a kind of a narrow niche, but how do you kind of, give it a broad brush so that it'll appeal, to other people?
Honestly, I've never even thought about it. I guess I have just enough confidence to be able to say, if you like it, great. If you don't read it. I mean, you're not, you're always please some people some of the time. So, either, like it or not. My mom loves to read Amish books. I could not stand to read an Amish novel. That's just not me. But, you like what you like. And so.
Wait, I didn't know there was such a thing as an Amish novel. I mean, I didn't. I know there's furniture. But...
You would not believe how many Amish novels are out there. Every time she goes anywhere, she brings home a big bag full of Amish novels.
Oh, Lord. I mean, I'm sorry. And I'm thinking, are the pages all made of cardboard or wood or something? It's like, they, from the outside, it appears that they have the most boring life, either the most pure and the most, relaxing or whatever, or the most boring life, for me anyway, that anybody can have. Oh, why would I read stories about it? But look, hey, there was a show on TV called Amish Hauntings. I watched that. I'm like, the TV person. Once it gets to TV, I'm like, oh, or the movies, I'm like, okay. Hey, do you like Harry Potter? The Harry Potter books? How do you feel about that?
I've never read them. My daughter is a huge fan, but I've never read any of the books. I've never watched any of the movies, so I can't give any kind of opinion on Harry Potter.
I'll tell you what. The only time I read anything in one of the books, right, was when the last book came out, and everybody was wondering if Harry was dead, and my daughter was waiting in line to get it, and she's like, "Don't tell me." I was like, "Well, I went right to the end. So now that everybody knows he didn't die, I was like, wait, I went right to the last page." But I cannot. That's another group of books that I found it hard to read and slog through. I didn't know whether they're written or whether it began as writing for like juveniles, and then it expanded into larger themes and stuff like that. I don't know. And the movies, I only like the last maybe 3 or 4 that got really dark. That were really that because that's just me, right, Bernadine? We're just dark, and
We're
it
dark.
got well, and the movies were great. They were well made. My daughter thinks she has a team of writers because it's like the last few books are nothing like the first few. There's such a big I wish I had a ghostwriter and got it published. She's a billionaire, Cindy. She's a billionaire.
Yeah.
I think, oh my gosh. But anyway, book club stuff. Yeah, the movies are great. So if you're gonna do anything, check out the movies.
Right.
Yeah, just rent the movies. And I don't know. I'm just like, yeah, she writes good. The movies seem good, but by the time it got my interest 100%, I don't think she was writing all of the books. I think she had like a team. So, well, let me get Dean in here. We're sitting here talking about book clubs and stuff. Dean, do you have any questions of substance?
I'm a non-author. I have one more question.
Yay.
Since you were in New Orleans and you are sensitive to spirits and the activity while you were there, did you pick up anything like good, bad, negative? Just
We went to the Myrtles Plantation. I was so excited to get to go there and to take the tour. I was very disappointed in how I didn't pick up on anything there.
That's because
Then we
it's not
toured.
haunted, Cindy. It's not haunted.
If there was anything there, I should. But then we went to the plantation, and I asked the woman giving the tour several times, "Are you sure that you don't have any ghost stories that you can share with me?" And she would cut me off every time. No, we don't tell ghost stories on this tour. And I was with my best friend, and I looked at her and I said, "I don't care what they say. There are ghosts in this house." I could feel it.
What plantation? I didn't hear. Rosedale?
The Rosedale.
your phone
Yeah, they're
keeps
not going to
cutting
tell
out.
you. Yeah, the phone cut out right when I was like listening to you for the plantation. Yeah, they're all haunted. I mean, basically all haunted. But you were right that there is probably good. But you see the Myrtles. You didn't feel anything because there's really not anything that they say is there. I mean, I hate to get on public radio and talk about it, but you can read Troy Taylor's book about it. And I think it's in one of his books. You can look into it, where he did, and I'm talking about Troy Taylor's research now. He researched the whole clothes story. He couldn't find any evidence of it. And you know how much, like we were talking last week or the week before, about how much it is to investigate there. They want like, what is it, like a $3.5 million or $1.5 million insurance bond. You have to pay a guide to be there, with you the whole time. And it's outside is haunted. Outside is definitely haunted, but inside, and this is just what Troy found, that slaves, unfortunately, people were property and they were very valuable. And for Chloe, the slave, not to appear anywhere in any kind of records is just, it just begs the question, So whenever anybody says that, I just got to tell you, check with me first.
Well, Cindy, did you go to the French Quarter while you were in New Orleans?
We did, but unfortunately, we didn't have a whole lot of time to spend there. So what we planned to do when we visited last summer, we actually stayed in Baton Rouge. So our plan for next year is to actually stay in the French Quarter. I want to stay in one of the old bed and breakfasts. That's a dream of mine, and stay right there. And I want to fly next time because it was a long trip. We're in North Carolina. It was a 15-hour drive,
Um,
and
Well,
yeah, I mean it was.
I can
But
recommend the Dauphine House Bed and Breakfast. I know the woman who owns it, Karen Jeffries, and I'm pretty sure it's a Dauphine House. We could send her Bernadine to the most haunted one. Oh.
hmm
No, that one happens to be haunted too. Yeah, the Dauphine House. It's on Dauphine Street. Yeah, I think so. And her name is Karen Jeffries. So, and it is haunted. But call ahead when you know exactly when you're going to be there. So it's a very quaint house. It's adjacent to the French Quarter, but not in the middle of the noise and everything. And it's just walking distance from the things that would interest you. So,
also, I will certainly let you know when I'm going to be coming back, the exact date, so you can help me with all of this and get me
Hey,
yeah,
maybe
good
if you
we
have
can
places.
get
time, maybe
together.
yeah, Dean and I were ESPing there. I was like, yeah, I
Uh,
mean, let us know, and we can join you or something down there. Then you get the real
Oh, that,
deal.
yeah.
that's
Then you get to.
really cool.
I've done. I mean, I've done it for other people who had no appreciation, for it. But I know that you would, and yeah, I'd be happy to hook up with
Maybe
you,
we can get a room in the same hotel and
investigate.
take you around.
Oh, that was so cool. Let's go
Maybe.
ahead and make plans now. We'll do
Well,
Get
that.
into the real haunts.
what I know, Dean has
Yeah.
your what you call it, your contact information. So I'm gonna have
Yes.
her send you all of ours rather than giving it out on the radio. But maybe I don't know if anybody's still listening. They're just talking about books, but they missed the best part. But yeah, I'll get in touch with you that way. My information and stuff like that. So we'll do it that way because I really do. Even if it doesn't work out when we could get together, I really do want to know when you guys are coming because I don't want you in getting into a situation that opens you up for a problem. Right now
Right.
we're the highest crime per capita than Chicago. We are very bad. We're the leader. It's not a
Um,
good thing.
That's just
It's bad management. It's I could go on and on, but this is not the
and
political
and
show.
and you having the accent that you do have could set you up for something bad. So,
Right.
if you're with people that are from here, it
Mhm.
may keep you a little safer
Yeah,
knowing where to
because
go.
they do. We
yeah.
can't even. So, but
They'll
we
pick
want you
on
guys to be
tourists.
safe. I think, what do you think? You'll get inspired when you come down here. There's a lot of history in New Orleans, and everybody that comes seems to want to write a book about it. So, what do you think?
I feel good. I would be inspired by visiting and really taking my time in the French Quarter. That would just be amazing. I also want to go to Salem, Massachusetts. So are y'all in for that too?
Ooh,
Yeah, road
all
trip
right.
one of these days. Yeah, that's fun. Could you see us driving up? We were going to drive to Waverly Hills and stuff like that. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I mean, I
Uh,
would love to go to Salem if there was something, set up. It's one of the places I've been wanting to go. And the Civil War battlefields up there. I've never been to Gettysburg, but I know those things are haunted beyond. Just they're just a hotbed of paranormal activity. I'd love to. Dean and I keep
that would
saying we're going to do a road trip. It's like, yeah, we're going to have this itinerary. We should go one place like every year, but something else happens and we don't have the cash or whatever. But we'd love that definitely because you're like halfway
that would
there.
um listen, ladies, I do not want to have to end this call, but my battery, I just got a notification my battery is almost dead on my phone.
Well, you're just on time because we were going to do the same thing. We're going to let you go. We've been talking with, in case y'all want to know, Cindy Ponds Newell. She has several books, and I would get One Grave Secret first because of the necrophilia. But how do we contact you, Cindy, really quickly? If somebody's looking for your books through Amazon?
They can order my books through Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble. I also have a Facebook author page, and I can be texted through there anytime. Message me, and I quickly respond. So yeah, look me up on Amazon.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you when you come on down.
I hope so too. Thank you so much for having me. I have really enjoyed this.
Thank you. Thanks for
you,
coming on.
Cindy.
We have too. We'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Goodbye. Have a good
Bye
weekend.
bye.
Right.
Bye bye.
That was great. We have established the authors that we do and don't like, but we're right up against the end. I don't think Joe was even. He's probably listening. But anyway, we were talking to Cindy Ponds Newell, and you can look up her work, as she said, on Amazon or on Facebook. Where do they find you, Bernadine?
Where do they find me? At lspr-society.com.
That's right. And if they want to get in touch with you, they can get you there. And I'm at AlleenPastanio.net. I'm all over the place on Tumblr and whatever, and Pinterest. Just find me. You can order my books, Haunting Tales of Old New Orleans, or Risks Incidental, Supernatural Dangers of Paranormal Investigation. And exploration, through AlleenPastanio.net. If you do, then you'll receive a signed copy. So you've been listening to the Supernatural Substation for Friday, the 9th of March, 2018. Remember to stay tuned for Kathy Bilski. She's going to get that quantum leap, and we're already at high. And stick around. Come back for 2 a.m. for Terminus, Dark Ambient Radio. Tonight, the Templars. So we're heading over there to the Crusades. So don't forget, we are on YouTube. We are at Spreaker.com. We're at UPRNPublicRadio.com, or I'm sorry, UPRNTalkRadio.com. And we are an iHeartRadio partner. So until next time, say good night, Dean.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Some choices are hard, like should you choose McDonald's Buttermilk Crispy Tenders or the Buttermilk Crispy Chicken in our signature crafted recipe sandwiches? Well, guess what? You can't make a wrong choice. It's Buttermilk Love, and that's good news. Speaking of good news, now you can get McDonald's 2-piece Buttermilk Crispy Tenders for just $2 from their $1, $2, $3 menu. Cannot be combined with other offer or combo meal. Prices and participation may vary.
Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive #1, #2 employee. Leave a message at the... Hey, Jamie, it's me, Jamie. This is your daily pep talk. I know it's been rough going ever since people found out about your a cappella group, Mad Harmony, but you will bounce back. I mean, you're the guy always helping people find coverage options with the Name Your Price tool. It should be you giving me the pep talk. Now get out there, hit that high note, and take Mad Harmony all the way to nationals this year! Sorry, it's pitchy.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.